Just want to introduce myself. My name is Ricardo. I am a librarian here at the Sacramento Public Library, and I'm excited to welcome you all here for Activate Teen Art in the Streets and Books for Youth with Robert Liu-Trujillo. I'm very excited about this. A couple quick notes. Please, if you're in the Zoom room, put any questions you have in the chat. We'll check in on those during the program, and Robert will be happy to answer them. You can access closed captioning in Zoom by clicking on live transcript button at the bottom of your Zoom screen or live on YouTube. So thank you. If you have any other questions, please, you can direct message me, no problem at all. So I'm super excited. I'm going to hand this off almost right away. Our guest is a really, really amazing person and really well known in the children's books illustration world. But as you will see, this person has a lot of talented activities and a lot of contributions to our incredible culture. So I'm excited to hand this over to Robert Liu-Trujillo. Robert, please welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much, Ricardo. So happy to be here. What's up, everybody? Juiced to talk to you all today. I hope everyone's having a good Saturday and got some good food planned for today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a slide presentation with you. Lots of pictures and it'll go fast. And if while I'm talking you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat.
Recording in progress.
While it is happening, I can read those questions and respond right then and there. And then we'll have some time for more questions at the end. So yeah, what I'm going to do is share a screen right now and then share some slides with you so you can see. All right, so can everybody see that? Cool. All right, so my name is Robert Liu-Trujillo. You can call me Rob, Robert. Just don't call me Bobby. I don't love the title Bobby. Much respect to Bob Marley, but yeah. So I am a father. I have 2 kids and I'm a husband. I work in the arts, multidisciplinary artist. I work in visual arts, doing illustration, murals, public art. And I also am a writer. I do kids books, both as an illustrator and as a writer. And I'm born and raised in Oakland, grew up in the Bay Area, but I've spent many times in Sacramento at the Soul Collective and checking out my homie Sean Berner and Francesca Gomez up there. So let's get into it. This picture what you see right here is a painting I did last year, just a self-portrait. I try to do one every now and then when I get a chance. And then the picture you see on the left is just me working. I was actually working on a kid's book in that picture right there. And it's in my studio, which is my living room. So when Ricardo reached out to me about doing this, one of the questions he had was about, public art and young people wanting to get involved. And one of the questions I had thinking back to my youth is, what does public art change anyway? Like, what does it do? Does it do anything, if at all? And that's a tough question to answer. And I think it really depends on who you're speaking to. For some people, it changes a lot and it's impactful. And for some people, it doesn't reach them at all. And when it comes to work that I've done on my own and with my collective Trust to Struggle, we try to reach as many people as possible. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a specific mural project, and then we'll go into some other ones. So this is a place called the Victory Grill. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Austin, Texas, but this is a landmark spot in Austin, Texas. And it's been so long since I've been there that I don't recall the exact location within the city, but I do know that, it's a prominent location. So Victory Grill is a place where they serve food. They have food that they serve there. It's a bar. But more importantly, it's a venue for performance. And when I went there, it was with the Trust to Struggle Collective in 2008. And we went there because we had put out the call to a bunch of different organizations and places throughout the US. We were doing a tour starting in Brooklyn, New York, and going all the way to the West Coast to Cali. and we put out a call to places to paint murals, but not just, let's paint something that looks dope, which of course you want to make something that looks fresh. The main thing was to be able to make some artwork in collaboration with the places where we stopped. And so the Victory Grill was one of those places. The Victory Grill is really prominent because it is part of what is known as the Chitlin Circuit. So if you look at the sign on the bottom, and forgive me if this is triggering to anyone who's looking, but there was something called the Jim Crow laws, and the idea of Jim Crow dates all the way back to, I think it was the late 1800s or something, but it has its roots in blackface, where a white person pretends to be a black person by putting black makeup on and dancing and kind of being a buffoon or making a fool of themselves, trying to pretend like they are Black folks doing a particular dance or song or whatever. So there were these laws called Jim Crow laws all over the South, particularly. It would have been difficult no matter which part of the US you are. If you were Black or someone who was Mexican, that's why this sign says no negros, Mexicans or dogs, which is pretty messed up. But specifically for Black folks throughout the US, you couldn't perform if you were a musician at any old location. So if you were thinking about the biggest venue that's in Sacramento, or for me in the Bay Area in Oakland, you couldn't just perform there. You would have to go to another location and perform at a usually smaller venue, but sometimes equal size, but usually smaller. And Black folks weren't allowed to go to those other venues. A lot of people of color weren't either. And so the reason I put this here, because it has something to do with the history of the Victory Grill. Because if you look at this image on the left, this is not the Victory Grill, but this is an example of a performance during that time I would say this is probably like the 40s or 50s right here. And then if you look at the map on the right, it shows you a bunch of stars in the South and in the Midwest and on the East Coast. Those stars are cities where people like James Brown, who was, a really prominent musician in both soul and funk, and had a huge influence on musicians of all colors and types throughout the world. But people like him and his band would get in a bus. They would take all of their crew, their band members, all of their gear, their roadies, and they would hop on the bus and they would travel from, one part of the US to the other, performing in these venues that were a part of the Chitlin Circuit. And a circuit basically just means a tour, like a route for your tour. And so when we got the call to hit up the Victory Grill, it was because it was in danger of being shut down. It was a group of people, the owner and other people who love it and have a history with it, were trying to keep it alive and designate it as a historical landmark. And so when we got to paint this mural there, that was a part of, assisting. They were going to get that done no matter what, but I think going there and being able to paint the mural and add to the historicness of this place was really important. And the reason why I say, going back to this question, what does public art change? I think it changes the perception for some people who are in the city and didn't know about it, to go and say, what is this place all about? The people who are in the neighborhood, the people who grew up going there, knew about it. But for folks who didn't, it was to add a little bit to it, is to give to their campaign, which was already going. We didn't start it, they did, but we got to contribute to it. And so one of the things that makes it possible for a place like the Victory Grill to be destroyed or, erased is two policies. And when we think about racism in this country, a lot of times the argument tends to come down to, well, I'm not racist. I'm not someone who's, saying something negative to you, or it's not about between two people. What is really lacking in that larger conversation is the understanding of systemic racism. And a system is basically a whole thing from start to finish that will guide a process or a foundation. That's not the greatest definition, but most people, you can understand what a system is. And so here are two factors that led to the Victory Grill being targeted as a place for them to get rid of in the city of Austin. One is redlining. So if you look on this map here on the left, this is a map of Sacramento. the parts that are green, those are the areas that are designated the most desirable for people to live in. Blue follows it, then yellow, and then the last one, the places that are least desirable, are red. And when Black folks and people of color wanted to go to a bank or a mortgage lender to get a house or to start a business, a lot of times they wouldn't have the capital or the money. So they would have to go to the bank and say, let me get that bread so I can get my house, or I can open up this spot, like the Victory Guild, for example. And if you lived in an area where there was red, basically they took a red marker and drew a line around the areas where most of the Black folks or Mexicanos or people of color were, you couldn't get a loan. So that is it's not just hearsay. That is an actual fact of U.S. Law all throughout the U.S. that kept people from, it basically kept people segregated. The other picture that's to the right is something that's called eminent domain. And that's the one I know a little bit less about. But basically, it's a term that a city or a state will use to be able to get land that they want, whether that be for developing a freeway or a new district or a ballpark, as in the case with the Los Angeles Dodgers. So many people have used that to be able to get land. So these are beyond just people who may not like Black folks individually or people of color. There are actual structures and laws that are set up to disadvantage people and to exclude them. And so when we did that mural, this is part of the mural painting right here. We wanted to, learn about this thing. And I don't know if some of us knew about it at the time, but we got to get a little bit of game from the owners and say, Ella Fitzgerald performed here or B.B. King performed here. These are names that became the foundation of what is jazz and rock and soul, so many different genres from the African-American community. So what you see in the mural here is it was yellow, and then we got to paint, and we chose to do kind of like sepia tones with little pops of color here and there. And it says the Victory Guild presents, and on the the bottom you can see some people standing next to what is a jukebox, because many of these venues were also juke joints where they would have a machine. Back in the day before a DJ, you'd have a machine that played the records. And then on the image on the top left, you just get to see some imagery of some of the singers, some of the performers, and then just some proud imagery of Black folks. Now, the image on the right, this is a plaque. This is a historic site for Motown, which is in Detroit, Michigan. But what the Victory Guild wanted to do was to get something similar for their location so that it couldn't be torn down. Once it's designated a historic landmark, they can't mess with it, or it would be much more difficult to mess with it. So the mural was impartial to be able to help them prove to the city and to get people rallied around it and say, hey, this place is important. We want to keep it. And so when I asked the question, what does a mural change? I'm hoping that it changes the minds of people. It changes the course of a campaign, or it changes the visual landscape of a city. Because if all you see is advertisements, sometimes that can be, detrimental to your mental health. So here are a couple other murals I got to work on after that. The one on the top left is a mural basically welcoming young people into the West Oakland Youth Center here in Oakland, California. And this is a place where people could come and dance. They could come and perform poetry or music. They could make their own music. There was art classes there. There was a daycare there. It's still there right now. And we did this mural over the course of, I want to say 2 years, where we got to meet with the organization who was spearheading it, and meet with the people who are going to be working there, and meet with people in the community, in the neighborhood. Not just come up there and say, hey, we're just going to paint something that looks dope to us. Let's meet with folks and see what do they have in mind. And through a back and forth of meeting with people, that's how we came up with the artwork for this front. And there's more to it, but I just wanted to show that main part. The one that's to the right, this is in a bakery and a Palestinian restaurant from a friend of ours named Reem Asil in Oakland, California. The restaurant is no longer there as it stands here in Oakland. It's in San Francisco now. But this mural got a lot of flack. You can't see it that well, but there's a button of Oscar Grant, who was murdered by the police there. And then this woman who is in the mural, her name is Rasmia Odeh, and she was an activist from the Palestine who did work in Chicago, I believe. And there were people who found out about it because she was, I believe, convicted of a crime, a terrorist crime, but she was like so many people who are in the justice system, coerced and forced to, say I did this or that. And I think she said that she actually did not do it. Anyway, we, stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine and their struggle for liberation. And so when we did this mural, we caught some flack for it, but really the owner of the restaurant caught the most flack. But for people who didn't really know anything about her or Palestinian food or Palestinian culture, it got them to ask the question, who is this person? Let me look them up, whether I agree with it or not. And so just going back to the West Oakland one on the left, one way that a mural can change things is by welcoming people. Another way is to get them to ask a question and to honor someone who is a social justice fighter or someone who believes in social justice. The bottom left one was created in the summer of 2020 after the George Floyd trial. And if you were in the Bay Area, I'm sure that I believe this happened in Sacramento as well, but there were tons of murals going up, tons of people, and this was really beautiful to see, tons of people responding to the moment with messages that were, about abolishing the police, messages that said, get rid of them altogether, messages that were affirming Black life, messages that were angry at the system, which targets Black people and people of color indiscriminately, both for murder and punishment. And so when I got to do this one, I got to collaborate with another artist named Binta Oyefem, and I'm saying her name wrong, but Binta is her first name. Oyafemi, I believe is her last name. And I got to take an idea that she had, basically affirming Black lives and talking about reparations, and then paint it. And so this was in downtown Oakland, and it was up for quite a while. And it was really for me to reflect some sense of joy, some happiness, some pride back to the people. And it was amongst many, 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 many murals out there at the same time. And so one other way that a mural can change things is by reflecting the people around you, and the visual landscape, whether it be in a dark alley or in the city center or under a freeway underpass, is important because those things, affect us mentally and physically, but also they teach people. So I hope that, everyone can understand that. And please feel free, if you have questions while this is going, to write them in the chat. Okay, so one of the things that will happen often if you're a creative person or an artist is you'll think, okay, I can't get the funding to do this, or they won't let me in this venue, or they won't let me do this. Basically coming from a place of like trying to get permission. But I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the first kids books that I did. It's really important to not wait for permission, not wait for someone to give you the green light, not wait for someone to give you the funding, even though those things can be really important and helpful. It's important to like take the initiative and do your thing regardless of what they say. So for me, when I started doing kids books, my son was the initial inspiration behind it, because I wanted him to, be able to read books about kids like himself. And this on the right is my daughter. This right here, these are a couple of pictures of people who I look to for inspiration when it comes to, or movements that I look to for inspiration when it came to doing my kids book, which was something that was self-published, meaning there wasn't a company behind it making it for me. I made it with a team of people. The image that's on the top left is a band that's called Death, and they were based in, I believe it was Detroit. They were one of the first bands doing what we know of as punk music. And punk today gets thought of as like a white music, and it's, I would say, predominantly white, but it has its roots in, Black music, and that's where it comes from. And people, there's lots of arguments about that. There's bands that go way back in Peru and other parts of Latin America. There's bands in the UK. The origin of it is not that important, but I just wanted to show this picture of Death because at the time they didn't get put on. They didn't get a lot of notoriety. People didn't like their name. People didn't always understand the music. And so I say that to say to you, people may not get what you're doing, but stick with it, do your thing. The image on the right and on the bottom is of a Bay Area legend known as E40. And I know some people who listen to hip hop up there know who E40 is. The top right image of it is of him holding CDs that he printed himself. And this is, I believe this picture was taken in the early 90s, maybe 91, something like that. But this brother started, basically him and his brother and his cousins selling their CDs themselves. They didn't wait for a company. They didn't wait for somebody to give them permission. They probably approached people, but they were all like, I don't get it, or no, I don't have the time. And so they said, well, you know what? We're just going to do it ourselves. And so they first recorded their music. They got it printed, they got it mastered, all that stuff. And then they started taking those CDs, not just here in the Bay Area, but all the way to the South, all across the US, places like Houston, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, but all over the Bay, and selling their music, and kept pounding the pavement until they built their audience. So E40, the hip hop community in general in the Bay Area is a big inspiration for me in terms of like doing it on your own and like making it happen. The bottom left image that's right there is a place called Gilman. It's in Berkeley, California. And I don't know if it's the band Operation Ivy, but you see their banner behind them. And this is a historic venue in the punk world where kids who had a name or who didn't really have a name at all could come and play music, for one. Kids of all ages could go there. And the reason why I put that there and it says make your venue is because you want to, again, not wait for people to give you the props or the green light or the money or the permission. None of that you need. What you need is to get together with your people and do your thing. And so this venue right here is really important because it, you know, people could come together and like play what they wanted to play. Even if adults didn't understand what the music they were doing, they got together and they did their thing. And they made this venue a historic landmark still today. And then the bottom right image of E40, believe me, I'm not trying to condone violence. The gun is a symbol for being able to protect your own integrity, meaning like you're not going to try to do what the powers that be say you should do, meaning you protect your art, your venue, your form, whatever that may be. So I took this energy with me when I went into children's books, and now I've worked on many different kids' books. If you see the image there that says Furqan's First, that is the image of a book that when I decided to do my thing, instead of reaching out just to the industry of the kids' book world, that is the book that really catapulted me, for one, to understand the craft, you know, the artwork, to really get down on, you know, both writing and illustrating, but also to understand the ins and outs of the business and what it takes to make a good book. And so, you know, you might have a middle finger to the system or the powers that be and say, screw you all, but you do have to work on your craft, whatever that may be, work on your stuff. And so when I decided to do that book, I wasn't getting any looks from the industry. I wasn't getting any love. I wasn't getting any interest at all. And I was going to them trying to get permission. And I decided, you know what, screw this. I'm just going to do it on my own, which I did. And actually crowdfunded it with a whole bunch of people who helped to make that book. And then once I made that decision is when, you know, I got my first, you know, deal from a company and started to get interest from other people wanting me to illustrate their books. And the one that's to the right that says Alejandria Fights Back, this is the most recent kids book that I've done. And I've worked in picture books, which are for kids who are like 4 to 8, and middle grade, which is like kids who are in elementary school and getting into junior high. And for me, children's books, although they may not be on the top of most teenagers' minds, but for me as a young father, it was 24 when I, you know, had my first kid, they were really important because they are a reflection of me. I didn't see very, very many reflections of myself in that world. And so to be able to make a kid's book about, you know, a kid like myself or like my son or like kids that we know, was really valuable and important. And although the industry didn't get it, once it was out there in the world, I started to get feedback from people who were like excited to see it, excited to read it. So yeah, and then that book there that says Alejandria Fights Back, that book is about evictions and displacement, which so many people I'm sure in Sacramento and all over the world are feeling, where people are being kicked out or displaced from where they live. And race and class has a lot to do with that. And the book is about this young child, Alejandria, fighting back and saying, no, I'm not going to take this. And if you see, a lot of these books are both English and Spanish, because that's also important to me as well, bilingual books, so that two different cultures can learn something about themselves. This picture that you see right here is another addition to, can I do anything with my ideas? What can I do that's going to impact people? So beyond just making the kids book myself, I decided to link with a bunch of other kids book creators who were both in the industry and self-published, and to make an event where not only could we sell our books and get them to people, but we could invite other people who are doing similar things to bring theirs as well. So if you see on the bottom right, I'm the one wearing the purple shirt, I'm holding my book. And then the people around me some of them are the organizers of the event, and some of them are the participants. And we all had books that we weren't necessarily getting love from the industry for the most part, but were making anyway, and deciding to share them with parents, with teachers, with librarians, with the greater community in the Bay Area. If you see on the left, the picture of the parent and the child, they're just, getting a chance to meet people face to face, who they might not get a chance to see otherwise. And these independent creators would bring their books. Sometimes they would bring extra things. And they got to get the chance to talk to people and say, this is my story, and this is what it's about. And that was really powerful, because it wasn't just about me, it was about our community. And when we all worked together, we made the voices, the diversity of stories rise as well. And if you look at the picture at the top the panoramic picture, that is a panoramic picture of the venue. And on the stage was this group called Alphabet Rockers from the Bay Area, who make music for kids that is social justice oriented, but also very much, critical thinking oriented, and about having pride in yourself and, what you believe in. And so just taking a look at that image, you can see there was a lot of people there. There were little kids, there were grandparents, there were aunties and uncles, there were people who were booksellers, there were librarians, educators, a whole bunch of different type of people came to this event. And that was the first one. This year is going to be the fifth one. But I'll just use that to say that when you're feeling like there's no way for you to do your thing, or you to make an impact, DIY. DIY basically means do it yourself. So learn your craft, get down to your thing, have fun with it, and get busy, do it. DIT means do it together. So if you see I'm here with all these other people, you're not alone. There are other people like you, no matter how obscure or, off the beaten path your thing might seem. So I'm just gonna stop really quick and see if there's any questions in the chat. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to continue. And again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat or send them to Ricardo. All right, just hang on one second. All right, so back to this question. So what can I do to make an impact? So whether it's, this case of a kid getting off for shooting people at a protest, or whether it's, police murdering or committing violence to Black people and to the Black body, whether it be people's lack of understanding or respect for people who are gender nonconforming or non-binary, whether it be sexual harassment and rape culture, you could be really pissed off about some of these issues, and you could just wallow in that anger and then just, lash out. But when you start thinking like, what can I do? Like, I want to do something. I want to take this energy and create something with it. What can I do to make an impact? Again, this goes back to do it yourself, meaning like, think about what skills you have, what talents you have, and make something with it. That could be an article of clothing. It could be a shoe. It could be a painting. It could be a song, a poem. It could be a building. Whatever it is, work on your craft. Don't wait for someone to give you a permission, and get to it. The thing that separates you from people who are just thinking about it is you actually working on your craft. And then find your tribe, find other people that you can work with. Do it yourself and do it together so that you're working with other people. Most importantly, take the thoughts or the things that are coming to you in that moment of anger or frustration, or maybe it lingers even after something traumatic has happened, and start, enter. I made this illustration after some protests because I feel like I just wanted to say to people, like, you don't have to have the greatest idea. You don't have to be the most skilled person. You don't have to be coming into this fully formed. It takes time, but just start somewhere. It doesn't matter if you start today or tomorrow or a week from now, but if you feel impassioned, if you feel like you have something to say, we need to hear that. We need to hear from you. So please start. So this picture that I have right here is of a group of people that I started with. It's called the Trust Your Struggle Collective, TYS. If you've ever been to the Soul Collective, Sean, I believe Miguel, Bounce, I think they did this mural that's on the outside of the heart and the flowers and all that. But this is, I would say, 60% of the crew. And then if you see in the picture of all of us on the left, Estela, who was the founder of the Soul Collective with Anand, she was just jumping in there to take a photo with us. And we've been able to do a couple of art shows at the Soul Collective in Sacramento, which is, family. They supported us and we support them in so many ways. This picture on the right is funny because it has Bernie Sanders in it as well. But again, build, get down, do your thing, do your idea, do your craft, do what it is that you want to do. Get as specific as you want to, even if you think other people are not going to understand. And then start finding other people who rock with it, people who understand it, people who want to be doing the same thing as you, and then share, build with them, like exchange ideas, exchange techniques, exchange styles. And from that, you make both of your ships rise, so to speak. I'm gonna look and see if there's some stuff in the chat really quick. Anybody has any questions? So Ricardo says, you make art, poetry, all of which is in support of community building. Did you imagine doing anything like this when you were a teen? No, not at all. When I was a teenager, I was angry, and the thing that was my outlet at the time was graffiti art. And so using spray cans, using markers, writing on walls, writing on buses, and writing on my sketchbook and in my home mostly. Graffiti art was what really inspired me, and seeing artists take that art form and use it to speak about something, not just themselves or their name, but getting up and talking about a message, whether that be police brutality or sexual harassment or some of those other things that I already said. Graffiti art was what really inspired me as a teen, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. It wasn't until I got a little bit older and understood what I liked doing art-wise and what I wanted to say together. And like I said, it takes time. So give yourself time. So here are a couple of more ideas when it comes to murals or your artwork. So one, this mural on the, this image on the top left is a mural that we painted of Trayvon Martin. And it was a collaborative piece with, there was many of us there, Aaron Yoshi, Bounce, there was my homegirl Cici Carpio, there was Dignidad Rebelde, Ori, Original. There were so many artists that came and got down with us and painted this collectively. And I was there painting as well. And this bottom left picture you see there is me hugging my son. We were just, having a hug, but he wanted to paint on it too. He saw it and he understood the times and he wanted to paint on it as well. And so, if there's something going on that you're pissed about, reflect the times. But also I want to encourage you to imagine the future or the events or the topic or the things that you want to talk about. on your own, imagine what you want to see. And so if you look at the top right, this is an altar. Ben Rojas, Mincho Vega did this with the collective. And we had this show, if you see on the bottom right, that's called Celebrate You. And basically what we did was we took pictures of people, both alive and passed away, who inspired us artistically, politically, so many different ways. And we painted portraits of all these different types of people. And a lot of them were in the Bay Area, or like Estela's in the middle there in that portrait in Sacramento. But some of them were international in other countries as well. And so it gave us a lot of strength, the things that they do, the things that they say. And so we just wanted to celebrate them. And so we invited some of those people to come to the show. Some of them, we gave the paintings to them. And in this altar that you see on the top right, we honored some of the people who had passed away and some of the people who had worked with us. And so get angry, get upset, you know, that's righteous, you know, but also imagine the future you want to see. You can reflect the times and also imagine what people may not be talking about. And then this is for when you're starting out again. You know, pick your craft. Like, what is it that gets you the most hyped, or what are you the best at, or what do you want to learn? Here you see some cats rhyming. They're on the microphone. That's Tyler the Creator and Earl Sweatshirt. And then on the right, you see some indigenous folks in Guatemala. They're making these, you know, embroidered shirts. I believe it's called a huipil. There may be a different word in Guatemala, but they're putting their talent to use making something. On the left, you see an athlete getting ready to run, or maybe this person just finished their run. In the middle, on the bottom, you see someone coding, you know, putting their fingers to work, coding. That could be for an application, it could be for a website. So many different things that we use now today in technology involve coding. And then the bottom right is someone, you know, directing with film cameras and audio equipment. And I'm just gonna pause again to see if there's some questions in the chat. Someone saying this is amazing. So thank you for listening, for watching. Just one last thing before I share some more artwork. This image on the left here is Princess Nokia. She's an MC from New York, from the Lower East Side, I believe. She's Afro-Latina. I believe she's Puerto Rican, but I'm not gonna say for sure. And then on the right is Cardi B, who's also from New York, from the Bronx. She's Afro-Latina as well. The images on the left and the right, you know, are two people who are really talented in music. And then if you look at the bottom, there are images of each one of them performing, you know, and there's people juiced, you know, people excited, you know, taking pictures, taking video. And the reason why I put this here is because there may be some people who say, like, you're not a professional, like, you're not as big as, you know, this person, like, what do you think you're doing? Like, people who are doubters or people who don't understand. And I gotta tell you, by seeing people who are professionals and people who are in the underground, quote unquote, whether that be in music or some other form of art, it don't matter. It doesn't matter. One might have more fame and notoriety, but when it comes down to making art that means something to you, when it comes down to making an impact in real people's lives, it doesn't matter. What really matters is you getting down on your craft, doing it, and, you know, sharing, reaching people. And I don't put these two there to pit them against each other. I just put them as examples of two people with similar paths, different levels of, you know, people's awareness, but both rocking, both doing their thing and like affecting people in a good way. So if people start hating when you start, or like giving you some flack, pay them no mind. All right, so how do you make art that heals or unites? I think it really comes from the heart. It really comes from your personal experience. That is what is genuine. When people see you being genuine, that is what people, I think, respond to, in my experience. And then unite, that is a tough one. I would put that question to you, the people who are listening and watching. You know, what do you think? what do you think makes people unite? I'm going to check again and see if there's any questions in the chat. When did you start connecting with mentors as a young person? This is a great question. So, and I'm going to show this is some more examples. You saw the Black Lives mural already. For me, first I had mentors from afar. So I would look at people like graph writers like Dream and Spy, or like Toons and Rifa, or Crayon, Reminisce, Lady Pink, like so many different graffiti artists. And I didn't know them personally. I just looked at their work from afar and got inspired. So that's one form of mentorship. You know, look at who's doing their thing in your field and study them. Try to reverse engineer what it is that they're doing. That was my first, way to start, I guess, getting some form of mentorship. And especially back then, because there were no classes for graffiti. You couldn't go to an organization or an after-school program and learn it. You had to learn by doing it yourself or by finding other people like you who were doing it. As I got older, I started to meet some of these artists that I admired, and they would drop some jewels. They would like give me some advice, or they would give me some words, or sometimes even collaborate with them. And I think the way that you start to find mentorship is by doing the work. That means, drawing, painting, singing, building, whatever that is. Like when you do the work and you put it out there and you share, people take notice. And so the more you do that, the stuff that you're comfortable with sharing, sometimes you may just be starting your craft and you don't feel comfortable sharing, but when you do, share it and you'll start to meet other people. And game recognize game, basically meaning like people who are doing their thing and they see you doing your thing are going to reach out and, if not give you a compliment, at least say, hey, I see you. So in the case of Spy, for example, Spy is someone who I've had a chance to, watch from afar and meet and collaborate with. And I can call him up and ask him now, but I couldn't as a kid. And it just takes time. You meet mentors as you go. So yeah, these are some walls that I've worked on. The one on the right is from the La Pena Culture Center a long time ago. The one in the middle is from an organization called Chapter 510. We already talked about the one on the left. The one on the bottom left is Cece and Tommy Wong here in Oakland, California, organized something when the height of like Asians being attacked in Chinatown in Oakland, and just tried to, instead of going with the media's line about Black folks attacking Asian people, which there were people of all kinds, mostly white folks attacking Asians, to basically show some unity between Black and Asian folks, because there's a history there. The bottom middle one is a mural that we painted for a community organization in Sunnydale Projects in San Francisco. And then again, the bottom right one, the West Oakland Youth Center, which we talked about. Here's some illustration work that I've done. And these are partially characters, like character design, where I'm thinking about stories or animation or film, or just drawing for fun. And then these other images are politically related, like the brown berets in the middle, the EZLN from Chiapas, Mexico in the bottom, and then when the Mike Brown verdict was happening in 2014 on the left. So please look up these names if you're not familiar with them. One of the ways that I continue to get better or try to improve in some way, because you never want to be satisfied with your work or decide like, that's it, I'm dope, I'm great, is to do art challenges or to challenge yourself. And so for Black History Month and for Asian American Heritage Month, I do these paintings. And so the one on the left is of Spy, which I mentioned. Great, incredible graph writer, great human being. And then Denise Oliver Velez, who's African-American activist, this woman in New York who was a part of the Black Panther Party and the Young Lords Party in New York, which is a mostly Latino organization. Here's some more artwork for organizations. So I mentioned in the beginning that I do illustration, and these are for different organizations or institutions. The one in the middle is actually for the Oakland Public Library. And yeah, that's some of the work. If you enjoy this, please holler at me on Instagram. This is my page, so you can check it out. It's at Robert_TRES. And that's my email and my website. So feel free to get at me, ask some questions, or just say hello. I'm going to check out the chat once again to see if there's any other questions. So the next question is, what is the most surprising thing about being an artist, author, activist that most people don't realize? I think one of the most important or surprising things is like how many people don't take breaks and don't take care of their health. And so a lot of people will burn out and say, I'm not doing art anymore, or I'm not going to organize around a particular issue. And it's important while you're doing your thing and while you're sticking it to the man or whatever, to take breaks, take care of yourself, take a walk, eat healthy, sleep, check in with your health provider or local healer, talk to people. You know, if you're going through some rough times, don't just hold it in, have conversations with people who you trust. And that is to take care of your mental and physical health. And when you've done that, when you are good, then you can really make an impact. If you're doing crappy mentally or physically, there's not much you can do for yourself or your community or the people or your family. So just make sure you take care of yourself. The next question, what self-care tip would you give to youth? I would say, and especially during this age of like everything being online, try to make friendships, whether it be online or in person, and build friendship with people that you can trust, and like allow them to confide in you and confide in them. Basically, like share. I know that's difficult online, but like try to build with people who are good folks, and um, become support networks for each other. That's what I would say. I know this is difficult because I have a teenager as well, and it's hard, especially during quarantine. But the next question being, what projects would you see yourself working on in 5 and 10 years? So one thing that I'm doing right now is an art book. I'm crowdfunding an art book on Kickstarter that's about basically showing some of the inner workings of like an illustrator or an artist's mind, where you get to see finished and in progress artwork. And I've been wanting to do that for a long time, so that, so many times when I read to kids, they love seeing the process. They love seeing my sketchbook and all that stuff. And so it's really awesome to take that and have a way for people to take it home and just kind of see some process. In the next 5 or 10 years, I want to be able to make more murals for sure. I want to make, art shows, like immersive experiences that people can come to and experience things. I want to be able to get into film and stop motion animation. Those are some of the things that come to mind. And I'm open, I'm open to new experiences. So yeah. Any other questions? So the next question is, what are your top 2 artists, actors, writers you would recommend to teens? That's a good question. There's a young woman named Wolfpack, Rachel, I think it's Wolfberg. I can't remember her last name, but Wolfpack, she's a really great muralist. I think she's based in Oakland, but she's done some work, all over. She's a really great muralist, worth checking out. There's a MC by the name of Classy, Klassy, from LA, who I got a chance to meet from Echo Park. She's really dope, both as a musician and also, what she's saying in terms of activism. Those are 2 that come to mind right now. So Classy and Wolfpack. You can look them both up on Instagram. And then someone else has a question, says, hi, this presentation is wonderful. Sorry I'm late. I worked with the Department of Education Migrant Education Office and wanted to see if you would be interested in joining us as a judge for an art logo contest. Sure. You can hit me up. I'm not that great at logos, but I'm sure I'll be down. And then tell us about Joy. So my wife, Joy, she's a graphic designer. She works for a company called Design Action Collective, and it's a cooperative, meaning there's no one boss. Everyone is an owner, and they all share decision-making responsibilities, and have different roles when it comes to making art, and they make a lot of work that is both helpful and beneficial and empowering for political and social justice movements. Oh, yeah, the question is about joy, the concept. The concept of joy, I think, is basically, you know, what brings you happiness. And, you know, if I was a DJ, I'd be thinking about collecting records, or, you know, collecting vinyl. And the reason why I use that analogy is because I'll look for some records in house music, or I'll look for some records in hip hop, or I'll look for different sounds and different genres and different artists. And if I was going to play that music out loud, which makes me happy, it's a collage, or it's a quilt of all those sounds. And I think to find to find joy, it's important to do that with you know, articles of clothing, or films, or you know, whatever it is craft wise that makes you happy. I find that it's, you know, it's joyful to be able to collect things that really inspire you and share them with people. Yeah, so that's it pretty much. That's my artwork. That's a little bit about, you know, getting involved and making artwork that has some element of social change to it, or basically joining movements that are already happening and contributing to them with your artwork. And it's been a pleasure speaking to you all. It's been a pleasure just hearing the questions, and really honored to be here with you all. So thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Sacramento Library, and thank you all of you for listening. Thank you. Peace.